Hi everyone, welcome to a peek under the hood of North Rock Cybersecurity's Done For You FTC Safeguards program. In the early months of the year 2022, I made a series of videos explaining the new rules and what was to be expected of car dealers, dealer vendors, and other businesses before the end of the year. As I started putting together the program, it became very clear that the requirements were not only based around strengthening dealership IT security controls, but to build out a formal cybersecurity program and facilitate a culture of security. In other words, very early on, we recognized this was not really the realm of IT much anymore. At this point, it made sense to spin off the security portion of North Rock Technical Services into a complete and whole new company, one that was 100% focused on security and compliance, one that could work with any IT arrangement. If you haven't watched any of my videos, a brief introduction to me. I'm a 25 plus year automotive IT and cybersecurity veteran. I hold an EC from MIT, where I studied management and cybersecurity, and I have multiple major industry certifications, with my latest being the ISACA CISM credential. As the Chief Information Security Officer of North Rock Cybersecurity, I've spent this year, 2022, designing and with my team standing up formal cybersecurity and compliance programs at dealerships all around. Now, in my previous videos, I promised to be intellectually generous with my knowledge on this subject, and so I'm going to walk you through our FTC Safeguards cybersecurity and compliance program. We have built our program not only to address the requirements, but also make your dealership more secure. We can also advise on common sense measures to keep your cyber insurance rates down. So real talk, this is version 1.0 of our program, as it is for everyone. Depending on when you watch this, we may have made changes, upgrades, and enhancements, but this is a great start to a program that is secure, compliant, and legally defensible. I think we built one of the best. While this is a great dive into our actual program, the secret sauce is still the people, the processes, and expertise that will ultimately make it work. This video will show you the processes and timeline, but I won't necessarily bore you with the in-depth nuts and bolts of each section. As you know, you have to establish the leadership and management of the program. This starts with naming a qualified individual, or QI. In the original proposed rule, they required a full-on CISO like myself, but the commission backed off that requirement and simply stated that the person had to have some level of information security training, but still recommended the use of a fractional or virtual CISO. The spirit of the rule is that the person running the program should have the expertise to identify and evaluate risks, as well as judge how effective any mitigating activities are. Unfortunately, at this point in the year, a lot of dealerships are putting this on their controllers or non-security trained IT staff, and whether that will be considered truly compliant from the FTC or a civil lawsuit standpoint has yet to be decided. In our program, we recognize that for smaller dealers, a Security Plus designation may be sufficient, but for a dealer of medium size and complexity and higher, a technical degree or advanced certification is probably more appropriate. The second part in our program is to establish communication with leadership. We do this with a security charter that explains that North Rock Cybersecurity is not there to replace IT, but to come alongside IT. We also work to educate department heads on the requirements and what to expect as the program is brought online. If we don't get buy-in from the top, it's not going to be successful, and we know that. So the next thing we do is we verify what, if any, IT security controls are in place that are required. We verify complete coverage of these controls and can make recommendations or assist in getting the required security controls in place. We will evaluate the existing security stack and advise in the first risk assessment. Then the real preparations begin. We install what is commonly referred to in the industry as a warhead. This is essentially a network testing device we will use to perform the required vulnerability and penetration testing. Part of the preparation phase includes creating a break glass plan for disconnecting the network completely in the event of a suspected full-on breach or ransomware situation. We red tag all the equipment and we write an emergency disconnect procedure so a non-technical person can perform containment actions while preserving the evidence. In other words, you don't just turn everything off. And we do that until an incident response professional can evaluate the situation. And containment can mean the difference between kind of a big inconvenience and a major disaster that takes more than weeks to recover from. It's really a big deal. So then we move on to evaluate. Per the Safeguards rule, we're going to map the network topology and then perform one of the 2 required vulnerability scans. This scan will identify weaknesses and known issues across the dealership's networks. The result of this scan will create a to-do list for IT. This will be a list of security issues to be addressed. If you're going to do this yourself, we recommend the Nessus scanner, kind of the industry standard, and provides a web-based result that anyone can work off of. In this stage, we also perform a physical safeguards assessment. Now, this covers many of the non-IT risks, such as customer data left unattended on desks, whether there's water pipes running above the communications room, or if customer data is being removed from used cars for sale. Our physical safeguards assessment covers almost 200 items, and we built an app to gather that input and capture any relevant pictures. So a brief detour. One of the security risks that we've found is that a lot of dealers are not fully clearing the used cars that they put out on the lot for sale. And while this may not necessarily seem like a big deal, the fact is, as cars are getting more and more connected to our phones and they have GPS navigation, one of the best illustrations of that risk is you've got in your car your navigation, the address to your home programmed on your GPS, and also have your garage door opener programmed to your visor. Unscrupulous individuals could go for a very long test drive or even buy a car, drive to your house via your GPS, use your garage door opener, and potentially get inside your house depending on the type of house that you have. Not only would this be a horrible thing to be responsible for, it's also a huge risk for the dealership. One company we recommend for helping to clear this NPI data is Privacy for Cars. They have a great product with a great guarantee, and no, we don't receive any financial compensation from them. I just think they've got a great product. Now, of course, that's one of the worst case scenarios, but really to be in compliance, you're going to have those text messages and programmed phone numbers. You're going to have all that information off the car's entertainment system. Now, of course, we perform a technical and electronic safeguards assessment using the same method. Now, this assessment is going to cover things like your password policy, automatic computer locking, computer patching, but also things like encryption on your copier hard drives, things that you don't typically think about. The results of this evaluation will come together to form the first risk assessment. At this point, we will meet. We'll meet with senior management. Based on the dealership's risk assessment, we'll create what's called a risk register, which in essence is a list of all the identified risks. We'll make recommendations on those risks to either reduce or mitigate, avoid, accept, or transfer the risk based on the risk score and the risk appetite of the dealership. We create this risk score using a combination of the impact, be it monetarily or reputationally, times the likelihood of it actually happening. At that point, we'll move on to the documentation phase. With the risk assessment and risk decisions made, we can create for the dealership's unique incident response plan, or IRP. This is the set of plans to help identify incidents and respond to a security incident and give basically a set of instructions for when an incident has been identified. We create a disaster recovery plan, or a DRP, and this is the plan to get back to normal operations within the agreed time frame. This is called an RTO, or recovery time objective, and to an acceptable recovery point in time known as a recovery point objective. We'll then create a business continuity plan, and this is the plan to follow that allows the business to continue operating while full recovery is in process. It's sort of a skeleton arrangement that allows the dealership to not be completely shut down. And finally, we create a written information security plan, or a WISP. This is one of the main documents that's required by the Safeguards rule, and this is the overarching plan that sets the strategy for the dealership, but will also spell out policies that are agreed upon in the meet stage. This document is not only a requirement of the Safeguards rule, but it's in essence the constitution of the dealership's formal cybersecurity program. Penetration testing. This phase of the program involves a real live attempt at defeating and breaching the dealership's defenses. Of course, nothing would ever be changed, deleted, altered, or destroyed, but this phase involves the engagement of a combination of real-life good guy hackers and automation tools to prove security. This phase is followed by another risk assessment and based on the findings and list of corrective actions for IT. One note, if you're a client of North Rock Technical Services and North Rock Cybersecurity, a third party would always be involved for this penetration testing. You see, we don't expect your team to inspect their own work, and neither do we. Evaluation number 2. After remediation of the penetration test findings, we'll perform a second vulnerability scan. This scan will identify any remaining or new weaknesses across all the dealership's networks. Once again, the result of this scan will create a to-do list for IT. Because security holes, identified risks, and threats are always changing, we expect to find issues every single time. That is why this cycle is repeated every year. At one point in time, a firewall and antivirus was enough. As threats evolve, so must we. Unfortunately, we must be right 100% of the time, and the criminals only have to be right once. The last phase is present. The final risk assessment and a brief presentation of the state of the dealership's cybersecurity will be made to the CEO, ownership, or governing body. You see, while the qualified individual addresses the risks, the dealership is still the ultimate owner of the risk. This part of the Safeguards rule aspires to remove any plausible deniability of the level of risk at the dealership at the uppermost levels. I hope this video has brought you value and given some clarity to the mechanics of actually getting your own program up and running. It is an enormous amount of work, but ultimately, I hope it will keep you out of trouble with the FTC and away from privacy or fraud lawsuits. I'm a car guy, so I understand the challenges of creating a culture of security with a bunch of end users that still want to know why we even have to have passwords. My name is Mike Perkins. Here's my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me, and I hope to see you in the next video.